how far was Elizabeth Holmes willing to carry an idea that could become a reality, and she has people investing in it before she's willing to admit to herself and her investors that it's just not possible?
Allegedly pretty stinking far.
Yeah, this week we learned about Theranos, which was a company that I believe earnestly wanted to accomplish what they set out to do. They brought
at least at one point.
Yeah, they brought in a lot of investors, but then they started faking some results, and the fraud spiraled, and we learned about the downfall of Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos as a company. So it's a wonderful, great Thanksgiving topic for you to jump into.
Yeah, a good thing for the family table. What are you thankful for? I'm thankful for the downfall of Theranos.
This is Things I Learned Last Night, a comedy podcast where every week we learn about something new. So we're going to laugh a lot along the way and also give you the information about what you came here to learn about. So, it's going to be a good time. This week is Thanksgiving. I don't have any shows.
Oh, good for you. You took it off.
December's pretty full, but they're all Christmas parties. So don't come to those.
You're not allowed.
Well, for real. There's like two public shows. One of them's like in Florida and the other one's somewhere else.
Speaking of private shows, you can join our Patreon.
I hate that segue. But they do get private content that's not publicly accessible. You can join our Patreon. You can get next week's episode right now.
Yeah.
And then you can also join our Discord, and you can get a bunch of bonus content. And we do a monthly live hangout where we just jump on a video call and get to talk and hang out. It's a really good time.
Yeah,
so
it's fun.
Without further ado, welcome to the episode.
Hey, man.
Hey, I love Disney. I would never in my life cross them.
Next card.
Their programming was far and superior to anything the Nickelodeon did. They certainly did not orchestrate Dan Schneider's fall.
There are no documentaries about Disney producers now. Coincidence? ?
And they're all dead. Anyway, I just wore a Disney shirt because I need to make sure they know I like them.
That you're committed. Yeah.
Yeah, I need them to know that I'm not going to, I've signed the terms and conditions.
Yes.
So anyway.
I haven't. Have you ever heard of Theranos?
Oh, yes. Thank you. Thank you, Timothy Stone, for finally, after a year and a half, choosing a topic that I said, this might be a great episode. Please take us through the journey of Theranos. I do know about Elizabeth Holmes.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
But I'm excited for the story.
Okay. So Elizabeth Holmes, here's a picture of her.
A bright young mind.
Yeah, here's Elizabeth.
A revolutionary.
Here's Elizabeth Holmes.
Yes.
She was let's just take it back to the beginning. Let's take it back to the beginning. She was born in 1984. Honestly, Eras Tour. I'm not saying she's Taylor Swift, but she was born in 84. She's blonde.
And you're a misogynist who can't tell the difference between any
woman,
any blonde girls. Oh yeah, I've seen you before. We've met.
Breeze School. We've met.
Are you married to dude? The number of people we did a gig at a place that I won't make fun of, and the number of people who walked up to. So I have an all-female team.
Yes,
which I'm very proud of. I love the people who I work with, and they work really hard, and they're great.
Yeah.
But the number of people who walked up to my manager and asked if she was married to my manager is infuriating.
Yeah, that's rough.
Like, are you married to their manager? And she's like, something like that.
She's like, I am the manager.
She responded, I'm married to the game, which is like, why? I was like, heck yeah, dude. That's the energy I like.
Did I send you that TikTok of the high school football coach?
No.
The high school football coach, he's like, one of my players on my team, I noticed that every game he ties a ring into his cleat, like into the shoelaces on his cleat. And he's like, that's kind of weird. And so one day after a few games, he asked him about it. And he's like, I just assumed, it's just a ring that he normally wears. And then he ties it on there so it's not in the way like during the game. But then he noticed he never wears the ring outside of the game.
This kid was like, I'm married to the game.
Yeah, so he asked him one day, he's like, hey, why do you have that ring in your shoe? He's like, because I'm married to the game, coach. And he's like, I couldn't decide if I thought that was really cool or if I wanted him to run gassers after that.
Have you ever sat through someone describing a video to you?
Fine, I'll stop doing that. Okay, maybe
no.
if you
really
watch
cool
the TikToks I sent to you,
because he's like singing in a. It's they've had to film this on a Sunday. He's in a Chick-fil-A rapping. There's the cow is doing the flosser, right? And then there's a car that's on fire, and it's pretty. I mean, honestly, it's a really great video. You should check it out.
it's a really cool video because they're like college students and they're like in their dorm room and they're like drinking orange juice. That's what they tell their parents. And then
So, first of all, it's apple juice. And second of all, it's what's worse is whenever someone describes a full video to you and then they make you watch the video they just described.
they described the whole video.
And you're like,
watching.
I literally have a shot for shot.
I know this video. You just described the whole thing to me.
Anyway.
Can we leave it? I didn't say anything.
Alex, do you know the video he's referencing?
Yeah.
Oh my God! It took me so long. Oh my God.
So, Elizabeth Holmes, born 1984. Oh, I was going to say,
So Elizabeth
preschool
Holmes
is doing a theme for Halloween this year, and it was eras.
Oh, sure.
And my brain was just like, oh, like Taylor Swift. Everyone's going to dress like Taylor Swift. And they're dressing disco, her team. And I was like, what era is that? And she's like, the 70s. And I was like, she was born in 84.
Oh, you guys are doing a different.
Yeah, they're doing actual eras, not eras tour.
Yeah.
Threw me off. Anyways, so Elizabeth Holmes, born in 84.
My wife's school, this is real, this isn't a bit, stop. My wife's school had pajama day.
Yeah.
And so my wife and I had a disagreement one night. And then, you know, when you wake up the next morning after you had a disagreement, you said you're sorry, whatever, you talk, you go to bed. But the next morning, you're like, you're not talking. You're you're
still mad.
You're like, all right, whatever. I'm making my breakfast, whatever. My wife is getting ready for work, and then she grabs her car keys in her backpack and starts to walk out the door, and she's fully in her pajamas. And I don't know that there's a day
Pajama
at school
day.
and so I'm sitting there, and in my head, I'm like, let her. I'm like arguing with myself in my head, or I'm like, she doesn't realize that she's in her pajamas. She's gonna go to work.
Yeah, it's gonna be embarrassing.
Just let her. Just let her go. And I go, no, you have to tell her. You have to say something. But like, what if you didn't? And I'm like going back and forth. And so finally, before she left, I said, hey, are you aware that you're in your pajamas right now? And she went, yeah.
Yeah, of course I am.
She didn't say anything. She just went, yeah. And then left. And I was like, I'm never saying anything again. It was that. And then when I got home, I was like, what was that about? And she's like, it was pajama day.
Pajama day, dum-dum.
Oh. Like, yeah. Like I was stupid for asking. She said it like she was like, leave. Like she's still mad, obviously.
Yeah.
And she's like, the whole time, she's like, I hope he doesn't say anything to me this morning. You know?
Yeah.
We have a really healthy relationship.
Yeah. So Elizabeth was born 1984.
Alex, do you have fights like that with your wife?
No, not really.
It's because he does the shows, so he gets home too late.
That's true.
So they never have the they fight midday.
They're gonna have one really big fight in 20 years, and that'll just be like a huge fight, and then they'll be like, "All right, got it over with," you know. And they just keep going
our
on.
one fight.
That's what I'm saying. Some couples are like that.
Okay, so she was born in 84 to the Holmes family, obviously, but they have a lineage, and I'm confused. I mean, I guess I'm not really confused about it.
She related to Priest
Holmes? Priest Holmes, is that what you're saying? No. No.
Valid
No, it's
question.
not. It's not valid at all.
Hall of Fame running back. Kansas City Chiefs.
From valid.
Priest Holmes.
So she comes from the
Priest
line.
Holmes was our one asset in the 2000s. Like he was all we had. We had Trent Green.
Yeah.
We had some good. We never synced up the way that we're synced up right now. with
Yeah,
the
you
Chiefs.
didn't have
We've got
overlap. Yeah, there
we've
was
got
some
a phenomenal defensive coordinator. Finally, we've got Andy Reid, who's insane.
Yeah,
and then we've got and right now it's insane that as of recording, I know that we're releasing this around Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
This may not be true. I hope it is, but it may not be true by then. That right now we're undefeated.
Yeah,
and
you see the video of half the team at that high school football game supporting Nagy's son? Nagy's son
No,
plays.
I saw the video where half the football team got to play a full high school team, and they weren't taking it easy either, dude. Like it was like, dude, you watching Chris Jones break a sophomore's collarbone. I didn't know I needed that.
It's a great video.
I watched it and I was so the ball is hiked, right? Chris Jones lunges straight at him, tackles him. You hear this kid go, all right? Yeah. And it was like like one of those things where you turn into a TikTok sound. And then and his ring goes flying.
Yep, because he's married to the game. Yeah. Anyways, you want to watch it?
Chris attacks him and then puts him on the ground and he goes, "You've been served divorce papers."
It's like the whole thing. Yeah.
We should watch the video.
Yeah, let's watch the video. What the story was it was Mahomes, Chris Jones, I think Kelsey, Andy Reid,
showed up to Spags,
Harrison
kid?
Bucker. Yeah, there's so much of the team just showed up to the game, and they were just sitting in the stands.
Whose kid was it?
It was Matt Nagy's
kid. Yeah,
was playing, and they just showed up at the game. They were just sitting in the stands, and it was crazy. One of the craziest things I've ever seen because they were just in the stands. I was like those
no
people
or anything?
Yeah, those people aren't allowed to just go be in the stands.
Yeah.
Like when you're at that level, like you're not.
That is crazy. We've talked about that on the podcast before, like how Mahomes and Kelsey can't go in public.
Yeah.
But like any lineman can.
Yeah, a bunch of them.
Yeah. I would recognize Chris Jones.
Mm-hmm.
I would recognize most of the players. I think. Anyway.
Yeah. Because right now they're really good.
But also you recognize, have we talked about this before about how you recognize NFL players in real life just based on their sheer mass?
Yeah, you would see them and you'd be like, I think you might be a professional.
Like I was showing Reagan that me and Mahomes are the same height, and I was like, look how tiny he looks on the field. Like when you look at him in the huddle, and I was like, we're the same height.
Yeah.
He's this, yeah,
he's a small.
So when you see a professional athlete in person, it's Remember when we were at the Ritz-Carlton, just a weekend getaway, and you remember when the Cleveland Cavs walked in?
Yep, yeah.
And it is
titans.
jarring. It's straight up where you're like,
yeah. They really are, otherworldly.
Yeah.
So anyway, so she came from a family line. Her great grandfather is doing fine. Was Charles Louis Fleischman. Sorry,
okay.
I couldn't help it. Charles Louis Fleischman. He is very wealthy. He was a Hungarian immigrant who came to the States to found a yeast company.
Okay.
And so he was a yeast baron. One of the first people who made yeast commercially viable. If it weren't for him, this is what historians say, if it weren't for him, we would not have bread like we do today. We wouldn't, at least not as much bread as we have today.
Sure.
Which we were talking about bread yesterday.
Yeah. We're talking about mother dough?
We were talking about money. No, we were talking about bread and
we're talking about mother dough?
No, we were talking about bread and how Subway's bread is fake.
Oh, hey. 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 I accepted the terms and conditions. I have nothing bad to say about Subway's fine restaurants.
Yeah, or Disney.
Yeah.
Disney and Subway have real bread.
Dude, the amount of people, I'm really finding out a lot about my friends because the people who are worried about McDonald's E. coli break, I go, huh. Really? You're worried? Huh.
It is pretty.
It's fun to evolve and be able to judge the past versions of yourself. You know?
Yeah. Because
I love to judge people who do the things I always did.
I have nothing to fear.
Yeah, I've not been not even air particles.
Yeah, I haven't sniffed a McDonald's in.
And that was when I knew I needed to lose weight, as I used to. Yeah, I used to drive by, head out the window, and just.
And that was with Burger King in the car. You had a bag of Burger King. You drove by.
No, you know what I did when I was
"Man,
fat?
that
A fat
smells
person
really
thing
good."
I did.
What?
Was Fazoli's breadsticks were a dozen for
I remember
$2.99, and man, I would crush all 12.
Yeah. Which, to be fair, great meal.
Valid.
Great meal. Those are so good.
And without Elizabeth Holmes' great-great-great-grandfather, Fazoli's breadsticks wouldn't exist in the
would not
context that
exist.
they do.
Yeah, so he got very, very rich off this. He was a
What do you
yeast
think? The
baron.
breadsticks fell out of a coconut tree? They exist in the context of all that we are.
They exist in the context of Charles Louis Fleischmann.
Fleischman? Great.
So somewhere along the line, they changed their last name to Holmes. That or her father is a daughter in the line. Or her father is the son of a daughter in the line. Her father is the son of her grandmother in the line.
Sure.
You know, I don't know. You know how family lines work.
Yeah.
So
I do.
I am one of them. I have family too.
I do know how
I
family
am not
lines
robot. What is this? What bit are you trying to do right now?
I'm just making sure that my kids and their kids and their kids know that I'm watching.
So Charles,
we just realized how this stuff lives forever on the internet. You know, like my
your
grandkids
kids are
will
gonna
probably
see
see this video.
yeah.
And I want them to know that I still expect them to, what, in the words of my grandmother, remember whose last name you have. That's what she would say when I wasn't behaving correctly. My grandma would go, remember we share a last name.
Yeah. And you'd be like, well, we don't share a first name, so no one's going to think I'm you. Okay.
We did for a while.
Then I asked if I could change it. Can I please?
I'd like to give up the name Della.
I don't want to be Della anymore.
It was a really hard conversation that I had with my family.
Yeah. We just got a new first grader. His name is Joan.
Come here, Judy. All right. So
Fleischmann spends a lot of money, but does pass on a lot of it to his son. His son says, I bet I could spend more. And so he does just that by becoming the youngest ever mayor of Cincinnati in the early 1900s. Passes on a little bit of money to his son, and his son, who is Elizabeth Holmes' grandfather, is like, I bet I could spend the rest of this. And he does. He does it by opening up like an art institute thing and does philanthropy.
Squanders it.
Yeah. And so she doesn't inherit a lot of wealth, but this is very important. She does inherit a family that's well connected. And so even though they're not very wealthy, they swim in the wealthy ponds. And so
which does create a dynamic for her, which is like, we're not wealthy, but I want to be.
Yes, and their family was very, very proud of their
history.
That the direct quote is, the family is very proud of their yeast empire. And they very much like it's like they longed for the days when they were yeast.
They had those
barons.
Hobby Lobby paintings on their wall, like those little frames that just said "From the West to the Yeast." From the yeast to the west.
As for me and my family, we will praise the yeast.
Sure. Praise the mother.
Hail the yeast. They Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They wouldn't bow a knee to the yeast, so they got thrown in the yeast furnace.
I come from mother dough.
Mother dough. But they really were like, Fleischmann was one of the richest people in America when he was a yeast baron. I can't stop saying yeast baron.
Yeah.
And Elizabeth, because she was just kind of steeped in this as a child, like they're like, our family was former yeast barons. We are important and special. Like she kind of grew up in this world where it's like, I want to bring back our family's yeast glory.
Okay.
And so she
every year they had a yeast feast. She tried to start a YouTube channel called Mr. Yeast. Didn't go well.
Yeah, she made a snack company called Yeastables. It was just a bunch of snacks without the yeast.
It was like, it just seems pretty important to have it, doesn't it?
Yeah, see, you want yeast, don't you?
That is able to be yeasted.
Yeast. Yeah, she became a rapper for a little bit. Her name was Yeast.
Yeast.
Kanye Yeast.
This sucks. This is actually a really interesting topic. I'm really excited. I'm really excited for the story. Please get to it.
So
I know this one.
So she's
a vampire.
She's in this culture with her family. Another important thing about her background before we get into the rest of the story was her dad. Her dad was a guy by the name of Christian R. Holmes II.
Okay.
Christian R. Holmes IV. That was her great-grandfather was the second.
Okay.
He's the one who spent the rest of the money. Her father, Christian Holmes IV, was a VP at Enron, which makes a lot of sense. She learned a lot of probably fraud from her dad.
Well, you gave away the ending. We don't know that yet.
Oh, yeah. She learned a lot about good moral business practices.
From Enron.
From her dad and Enron, which is a company that we all know is a good moral business with very sound business practices.
Yeah.
And I don't know, actually, if her dad got any fallout from the Enron scandal. He was a VP, but I don't know if he
lost his job, for sure.
Well, yeah, he definitely lost his job. And we do know that after the Enron scandal, that he did bounce around from job to job. And so her later youth was moving schools often because they were moving for his work. Yes. Because he couldn't get a good job. So he must not have gotten a prison sentence or anything if he was able to move and find new jobs.
Yeah, he was just a VP. Vice presidents do nothing.
That's true. Yeah. At what level do you have to be to in a scandal like that to have repercussions?
I think probably somewhere in the C-suite,
Yeah. Where do you have an ownership stake? You probably have to have a majority stake.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, also it depends on how involved you were in the scheme, because there's sometimes where that scheme happened, but the CEO, as far as the paper trail works, wasn't involved.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, if you're going to fraud, you got to make sure you're not part of it.
Yeah. But also what happens sometimes is that the people at top of the frauds get away with it because they've created a paper trail that paints the target on someone else.
Yeah, that's when you know you're really good at it.
Yeah.
So
that's how I've gotten away with it.
So in high school, her parents she went to private high schools. She got into computer programming, and she actually started her first business in high school selling. And I don't know how she pulls this off. Something we're going to find out is she's really, really good at selling herself.
Yeah.
And talking the talk.
Oh, for sure.
And so in high school, she manages...
The gift of gab, some might call it.
The gift of gab, yeah. She manages to sell C++ compilers, which C++ is a computer programming language. A compiler dumbs down computer programming languages into dumber versions of languages. Mm-hmm. Dumb, that's not the technical term, but essentially more primitive languages, and then allows other devices to be able to read it. So she was selling compilers to Chinese universities in high school. I don't know how she managed to pull that off, but she was selling these compilers because her parents had, early in high school, arranged for her to learn Mandarin. That was a extracurricular activity that she had. And so she then went to Stanford.
Are you trying to learn Mandarin? On Duolingo?
Technically, I'm not learning Mandarin. I don't think.
What are you learning?
Actually,
just Chinese?
Yeah, actually, I'm learning. Yeah, that's actually a good question. I don't know what. I'm obviously not learning a lot.
What are we learning?
I'm actually not learning a lot. Yeah, it just calls it Chinese. I don't know if I'm actually learning Mandarin or just Chinese. I don't know what the difference is.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyways, so she goes to Stanford.
I've got a Duolingo streak. I set mine to learn English UK, and I'm doing really great so far. It's
I hate you so much.
Everyone's
really
like, this
funny,
is
though.
really hard.
That's
and I'm like,
I've been number one in English UK for months.
dude, I'm like, my streak, my
Crushing it.
points.
Yeah.
My comprehension.
There's a couple words that I can't get though.
Pretty difficult, but
It's the pronunciation though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's this one word, it's COLOUR, and I just can't figure out what that is. I don't know what it means.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't asked. So they go to Stanford. She goes to Stanford, and while at Stanford, she's studying chemical engineering. And she
What is she hoping to do at this point? Do you know?
be rich. I don't know if
Okay.
there's I don't know if there's a career goal, but she.
So it's your goals.
Yeah, sure. And she joined a sorority, and she's just doing like the college thing, right?
Yeah.
While she's there, she develops this theory or this plan for a business.
Yeah.
And the plan is she wants to do blood tests with a lot less blood because she doesn't like blood and she doesn't like needles.
True.
And so she's like, it'd be sweet if you could do it. With
We have a
just
lot in common, her and I.
Yeah, you do. Yeah. You both come from yeast empires.
Different yeast empires,
Different-
too. Competing yeast empires. In the early days of this show, we did like affiliate ads where we were like, hey, sign up for Grammarly and use code TILLN, and we got like 15 cents. And now we just do Patreon. It's a much better way. It's better for us as creators. It's better for you as listeners. And it's a much more fun way for us to interact. We do monthly hangouts like on Zoom. We just hang out and play games online and get to know each other. It's a really fun time. So, but still use our code TILLN at Grammarly.com because I think it's still
think it
active.
is still
we might
active.
get like a couple cents from that.
Yeah.
But join us on Patreon because we're having a great time.
Yeah. If you don't, we're going to have to start doing mobile game ads. Yeah, you were the best in the West. She was the best in the East.
I hated her growing up.
I have the best yeast in the West. She has the best yeast in the East. This is the best yeast on this side of the Mississippi East. I keep bumping into the bookshelf today.
I know. Every time that you do a topic I actually want to talk about, you just also do this.
This is what I do in every episode. The Mississippi East. So she tells one of her professors about it.
Right?
And she's like, okay, so I got this idea.
Can I do this?
Yeah, she's like, what if because I don't like needles. And so she tells her professor. And her professor's like, it's never going to work.
Yeah.
She's like, that's not enough blood. You need way more blood to be able to do those tests. And she's like, well, what if we did less blood? And she's like, no, it's not going to work. So then she walked out of that professor's office and walked into another professor's office and said, hey, I have this idea for a business. Told him, and he was like, that's a cool idea. I like it. The thing is, he wasn't a subject matter expert in that.
Right.
He was a subject matter expert in like engineering, while
Yeah.
the other one was in like bioengineering.
Yes.
So this guy didn't know that the idea wouldn't work.
Was impossible.
Yeah. And
Sure.
so she found someone who was like, that's a good idea. And she's like, okay, cool. My professor thinks it's a good idea. I'm going to do it. And so she starts pursuing this. And so in 2003, she leaves school and starts a company called Real Time Cures. Goes to Palo Alto. So she's in Stanford. So she's the same area.
Right.
And her goal is to democratize healthcare. And I think that we were talking about this the other day. And I think this is the thing that we were missing. So right now, everything is AI. The AI is the buzzword. If you can power your technology
Right.
with AI, you win. In the 2010s, it was data. Everything's
Right.
data-driven.
Data-driven.
Data-driven was the word. Democratize X was the early 2000s.
Yes.
We're bringing everybody's power, everybody's hands, and like you all have
Yes.
control over your own thing. And so her idea was just that. You could use a take-home finger prick,
Yep.
finger prick your finger, and then you'd have a small little vial of blood, which she's actually holding in this picture.
Yep.
Small, tiny, tiny little vial of blood. It looks like maybe a big Tylenol capsule.
Right.
Is she cross-eyed in that picture? I feel like they probably should have said, hey, let's take this again. You look cross-eyed in this picture.
No, she's just looking at the thing. But it is interesting knowing how the story ends. Like, what do you think's going on in her head when she's taking this picture? Like, you know?
Oh, I
Anyway.
have very strong thoughts.
All right, let's get to it.
So you finger prick and then you send it off. They have a simple machine that could get you same day results for
Sure.
what I think they were saying was 60 different blood tests. And so the idea is you're going to get your results much, much quicker. And so she puts a team together. They start studying all this. They start trying to make this possible. And she's going out and she's getting funding. So by December 2004, she started the company in 2003. By December 2004, they raised $6 million to fund the firm.
Yeah.
Later in 2010, they raised more than $92 million in venture capital. And she puts together this board of very influential, like big name people. And I think it really does it just comes down to what I said earlier, where she was just a really good salesperson and selling herself. So obviously she's in the board. And so she pulled in Riley Bechtel, which was former Bechtel Group CEO, major US company. David Boyes, another founder of a major company. And then now's where we start to get to some interesting people. William Fogy, which was the former director of the CDC.
Okay.
Richard Kovaich, which was the former CEO and chairman of Wells Fargo. And then Jim Mattis, who you might know as General Jim Mattis, who was the U.S. Secretary of Defense. And then another former executive of Amgen. And then investors included like Larry Fink, members of the PayPal Mafia, and then even George Shultz, which is former Secretary of State. And so she was putting together this group of like high-ranking government officials.
It's one of those snowball effect things where if you get, because she went to the professor that she's got the backing of a professor there. One professor told her this isn't going to work. And then you get a couple other influential people, and once you've got like. This is kind of why I'm like hesitant to let people open on my shows and stuff. Is that like, it's not that I'm kind of any kind of big name, but then once you've done that, you can say, oh, I know, and I've worked with Jaron, and you can use my credibility with someone else and leverage that in your conversation. And so you can say, well, I had this conversation with them. They seem pretty excited about it. Oh, well, if they seem excited about it, and so it's a snowball. It's not like, all of a sudden she's got this entire list. It's like she gets one at a time, but then it snowballs to where it's like once you've got 4 of those people, you can get the rest of them.
Because they start to see, oh, you've got that person signing off on this. This must be legit if they did.
And what did we just talk about? The it's almost like a confirmation bias type thing of.
Oh, the circular reporting.
The circular report, where it's just like, oh, they're in. I don't even need to dig any further. They've probably done their own due diligence, so now I can trust them.
100%. 100%. And I think this is also a symptom of Silicon Valley, even to this day, but especially then.
It's just gambling.
Because
so many of these investors are just like, if I invest in 6 of these companies and 2 of them pay off, it covers my entire investment.
Yes, exactly. And at this stage, investing in any business in this stage, like, there's not fundamentals you can look at. There's not you're just looking at a business plan. There's not a product. Idea even. Yeah. It's like they don't even
so
have
many
it
of the
together.
ideas in Silicon Valley are just ideas of like, this is a crazy idea. Now, the idea pitched here, being able to do blood tests on a smaller amount of blood, is a crazy idea. Like where it's like, if that pays off, if this
huge.
works,
it's huge.
If you like, even if like let's say that she starts this, and I think she does. I think she's genuinely like, I think I can figure this out. We know where it leads, but I don't think the whole time was like, I'm going to do this. Like, it was like, she can figure this out is what she thinks. And so, the amount of upside that could happen if you do crack it. Is insane.
Because if you would have put $1 million in 2003,
you're a billionaire,
and the company goes to 10 billion. You've got a major stake in this company. And I think that's what most Silicon Valley investors and venture capital, especially in that era, were doing, where they said, like, exactly like you said, I'm going to invest in 7-8 companies. I've got 10 million to spend. I'm going to throw them at all. One of them is going to pop, and it's going to be worth it for all of that spend, all the loss on everyone else. And so it doesn't matter if it's sound. It doesn't matter if I think you can actually do it. It just matters the numbers game.
And here we are 20 years later. That's still happening. But it's definitely like after the WeWork and Uber Bus and Theranos, like after a couple big unicorns,
turned
the
out to be ogres,
unicorn stabbed you in the butt or whatever. There's a little more. It's harder to get funding than it used to.
People are a little bit more cautious. And I think, anyway, so she gets a lot of funding. and they start building this company. And it's very much like.
But you were saying, all I was countering was like, it's not just her gift of. It's not like she's just a smooth talker. One, I think she genuinely believes this is possible.
Yeah.
And two, she has an idea of how to make it happen. She is talking with reputable scientists and people who are actively working on a way to make this happen.
Yeah.
And then she's leaning on the credibility of the people she's already got on board.
Yeah.
So it's not just like she's smooth talking her way through and getting money is what I was trying to say.
Yeah, and she does have a good background. Like she built a business in high school that was fairly successful. She went to Stanford, even though she didn't finish Stanford, but she went to Stanford and she's very well connected.
Right.
And so it's like if you're an investor, you see this person and she's good at communicating. Like you can't really fault an investor for investing at this stage because of all those things.
Exactly.
Like it makes sense that an investor, especially a Silicon Valley investor, would invest in a business like this. And so they start building it. And like any Silicon Valley company, they're building the plane while it's flying. But what's different about Theranos than a lot of companies is they're building this business while it's flying, but they're flying in the dark, if that makes sense. Because they don't go public, and I'm not meaning like on the stock exchange. What I mean is like no one knows about them other than their investment group and their board and their employees and stuff until 2013. So they're building this whole thing in the dark, seemingly trying to get it right.
For 10 years.
For 10 years, building this company. They originally launched as Real-Time Cures. They changed the name later the same year as they launched to Theranos, which was a combination of the word therapy and diagnosis, because they thought that the word cures, like people have a bad association with that. Yeah. And so they didn't want to keep that.
Or also an expectation of like, this is going to cure you.
Also true, because it was just supposed to diagnose you. It wasn't supposed to, you don't do that fingerprint and then all of a sudden be healthy. And so they, in 2013, for the first time ever, launch a website and kind of go public with what they're working on. And at that time, they had already signed a deal with Walgreens. And so the deal was they were going to put their device in Walgreens. And so here's kind of a quick look at what they're doing. So historically, if you needed to get blood work done, they have to draw like a decent amount of blood. And then they put it through this massive device, which is like a full kitchen in most houses. And they're big, huge cabinets, big, huge machines. They're like the size of commercial printers. And the blood goes through the centrifuge and gets shaken up. And then they run all these tests and diagnostics through this whole process. And it's huge. It takes hours upon hours. Your blood has to get sent off to these third-party labs. And you don't get your results back for weeks to find out what's going on. What Theranos built was this device, which looks like a countertop ice maker. Countertop ice maker, or like an early PC, a little bit bigger than an early PC. It's very small, fits on a counter, and we saw that picture of her holding the vial. All you need is this tiny finger prick of blood. You shove it in there, and it can give you, I think they said, up to 60 different test results with that in minutes. Which originally the plan wasn't for it to be 60, right? The plan was for it to be just a certain number of... I don't know when they launched, honestly, how much they wanted to. She always talked about the story. She would tell this story about her uncle who got sick and died. Yes. And a lot has been said about that story since. But so that was the example she always told. So maybe when she started, it was specific to that case. Yeah. And over time it grew. I don't know, actually. I think if I remember correctly, there was like, it started as a smaller panel and then it just eventually outgrew, where it's just like, listen, if the smaller panel's not possible to do, let's just say that we can do it all. Yeah. Where it's like, what's the point about lying about 4 things if we can lie about 60? Lie about a bunch of things. Interesting. And then what Walgreens was good doing is Walgreens was retrofitting their stores and putting in these little Theranos places, like Theranos, what's the word I'm looking for? Like Theranos centers. Yeah. And where they were going to have these machines. Yeah, they were going to have those machines on site. You could walk in, they'd finger prick you, they'd plug it in, and then they'd be like, all right, here's what your blood says about you. And it would say like, doesn't look good. It was like a Magic 8 Ball, those kind of responses. Yeah. Please try again. Looks bad. Diagnosis unclear. So yeah, you go in, you get your finger prick, and then they'd give you the results. Walgreens invested $350 million into adding this into all their stores, and it was pretty phenomenal because no one had really heard of it yet. Like the company didn't exist. I mean, it existed, but as far as the public eye was concerned,
there was no public trust built. There was no anything. It was but again, it's one of those things where Walgreens puts its name behind them.
Yes.
And now you're both, lean on me. We're both lean together in this.
Yes. And so then later that year, Safeway is like, we want it too. And so Safeway jumps on too, and they invest, I think, $150 million into it, and they're retrofitting their stores, putting this in all their stores. And so by this was 2013, they go public. By mid 2014, Holmes is now like a figure in Wall Street business world. She's on the cover of Fortune, Forbes, New York Times.
How many machines are they promising to roll out?
Oh, I mean, I don't know what the number is, but at this point, it's got to be thousands because they're putting it in every Walgreens store, every Safeway store.
And like those machines are going into the Walgreens.
Yeah, they're going in there. Yeah.
Okay.
And so she makes it on the Forbes 400 list at number 110.
So now every Walgreens has one of these machines, and every Safeway's got, most.
Yeah, what I should say is every Walgreens, every Safeway is getting these machines.
That's what I was saying. I was saying that.
I don't think everyone has them yet. Everyone's getting them. And so she lands on the Forbes 400 list at position 110 because now the company is catapulted in the matter of a few months to a
everyone wants to be early.
Yeah. And so now they're a public company. They're public on the stock market. They hit a $9 billion evaluation. And so she becomes the youngest female billionaire in history. And obviously, given her background and what we know about her, this is like a huge thing for her.
She loves this.
She's pumped. And she also, one thing, I don't know if you could guess by this picture who her idol is.
Loves Steve Jobs.
Yeah, she only wears the Steve Jobs turtleneck. That's the only outfit she wears.
Okay.
And she's a huge Steve Jobs fan. She does Steve Jobian things all the time.
What else does she do?
So she like builds her life around the things that Steve Jobs does.
Yeah.
And so she sets up her office and like her company culture in the same way
very
that
simplistic,
very simple. She
wears
does
the same thing every day.
Wears the same thing every day. She does the same kind of like cutthroat stuff.
Yeah.
Where so Steve Jobs was famous for I think it was the Mac 2 or 3. He put 2 engineering teams. He pitted them against each other to build it, and it was like whoever builds a better product, we launch. She does the same thing, but on them, she says whoever builds a better product doesn't get fired.
Keeps her job.
Yeah. And so she takes a lot of the ideas that Jobs had that were like, oh, that was kind of a fun, good idea to like have this competitive thing in your company.
And she goes, let's raise the stakes.
Yeah, let's raise the stakes. Whoever does this better.
I'm out for blood.
Yeah. If you guys don't do this better, then we're putting you in the yeast oven. Oh, I'm out for blood. I didn't catch that. That's pretty
yeast
good.
Oven? I'm out for blood. And you were like, I'm going to make another yeast joke.
I like the yeast bit.
I'm going to do the yeast bits.
I'm a big fan of the yeast bit.
What else does she do?
What other Jobs things does she do?
No, she does a weird thing.
I don't know. I feel like you're looking for something specific.
You don't know about...
Oh, she talks with a very
She talks with a deep voice.
Yeah.
And she never acknowledges it. She's like, this is just my voice. But there's a lot of analysis that's been done about this.
Mm-hmm.
Have you looked into the voice at all?
No, I just assumed her voice was deep.
You didn't know this?
No, yeah.
So she's faking that. And you can watch the progression of that happening where she starts to talk slower and deeper because she thought that that's how that commanding the room was.
Oh, no.
Was that she's just, there's a lot of analysis of early videos of her versus later videos.
No.
And how you can see it slowly progress to where she talks like this and doesn't open her mouth all the way and does this, very low voice. And this is just how she talks now.
Oh, no. I did not know
You didn't know she was faking the voice.
I didn't know she was faking the voice.
That's one of the main things about her.
I was going to bring it up because it felt like I was making fun of her for having a really deep voice.
No, she's like faking the voice.
Yeah, it's bad. It sounds really weird. Now that I know that it's fake, it's really weird.
It makes way more sense that it's fake.
Yeah, that makes way more sense. Because it sounds labored. Like it sounds like obviously I'm a dude, so my voice is naturally deeper, but it sounds like she goes.
I don't know about that. I don't know about that. I mean, obviously I'm a dude, so my voice is just naturally deeper.
But this is what it sounds like. If you haven't heard her voice, this is what it sounds like. This is what it sounds like she's doing. She sounds like she's like down low, like
yes, like she's
so here's what we do with the blood, and we're
going talking from the back of her throat.
Yeah,
and doing it's very
weird.
Yeah, there's a whole like video essays on this.
Interesting. I just thought she just had a weirdly deep voice.
Yeah,
wow.
And like internal. If you watch the documentary, the team talks about how her voice changed over the years.
Interesting.
And all of them make fun of it. They're like, yeah, the voice.
That's pretty funny. Yeah, I just read about this.
I feel like that'd be a really. You've never. Oh,
I've just read the stories. Like I didn't watch anything.
There's a before we get too much further into it. There's a really good. Was it on Netflix? Look up the drama pic of this. What do they call that when someone does a
biopic?
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
A biopic is like when you dramatize the story or whatever.
The Dropout.
The Dropout. Is it on Netflix?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, no, it's on Hulu now.
Okay, it's on Hulu. It was on Hulu to begin with.
Was it?
Yes. It's on Hulu. It's called The Dropout. A very, very good telling of this story. And the actress was phenomenal in that.
But yeah, anyway, they nailed it.
They really did.
Hold on. I just need to. This is crazy how accurate this is.
Oh, how accurate they got the picture?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. They really did a really good job with this series.
Yeah, look at
so we're not sponsoring anything. Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Pretty wild how much that looks like her.
Yeah, they really did a great job, and and they do the voice change in that as well.
That's pretty funny. I did not know that.
It's like the whole series. She talks like this.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Wow. Wild. Okay. So wow. She's got a weird voice.
Well, she thought that was like the cutthroat business leading charge thing.
Yeah. Which. To be fair, if we're talking from a psychological
I'm enjoying doing
side
a topic
of things,
where I know it and we're kind of like co-teaching it. That's kind of fun,
I think from like a psychological standpoint,
yeah,
being a woman in business in the early 2010s,
for sure,
like that does make a little bit of sense. Yeah, especially interesting. Which
is what makes the end of this story that much worse. I think.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah. And so she was running this business like a lot of Silicon Valley tech startups.
Right.
The problem was this wasn't just any tech startup. This was a like medical tech.
Yes.
Biotech. Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. A biotech startup. So the standards the standards are a little different, and the way you need to confirm some things is a little different because like you probably heard this. The kind of mantra of Silicon Valley is go fast and break things.
Yeah.
And so the idea is you move as quickly as you can. You want to beat everybody else to market. It's not going to be great, but you're going to figure it out once you're out there. And with something like this, that doesn't work great because
it's the same thing that Uber did though. Have we been talking about Uber lately? Who was I talking about? I was talking about Uber with Shama and how Uber went full circle, just straight back to taxis. Where like Uber did all this stuff, like we're gonna revolutionize this, we're gonna make it so you can book it on your phone, you're gonna see that, you're gonna have all this stuff.
Yeah.
And then they went back and they were like, shoot, actually the taxis had this system figured out already.
Yeah, they did
we
better than this.
Royally messed it up.
Yeah.
And so now they're just they're trying to slowly walk us back to now it's just Uber.
I mean,
taxis.
That's what Netflix is doing.
Yeah.
Netflix is like, honestly, TV was sweet.
Netflix is like, shoot.
They're like, we love live TV.
They were able to make it so cheap because they had ads.
Yeah. I saw an ad.
That makes sense.
I saw an ad for Hulu the other day that made me so mad.
Yeah.
Because in the ad, they said, what did they say? They said for $79.99 a month, you get access to 99 channels. And I was like, shut up. 99 channels? I had 10,000.
Yeah.
Albeit 9,950 of those were trash, but I had 10,000.
Yeah.
And now
I saw a commercial.
99 channels.
I saw a commercial that royally messed up my day.
What?
The Zillow commercial. Have you seen this?
No.
Zillow commercial? Oh, we're back to explaining videos shot by shot.
I mean, I might have. I don't know. You tell me the commercial.
Zillow commercial where it opens on the girl, she's breaking something in the living room, something falls, and she's like, "Oh shoot!" And then up pops her yearly salary, $114,000, right? And a voice in the other room goes, "What was that?" She goes, "Nothing. I broke the thing." Right? And then it cuts to that girl. It shows her salary, $110,000, right? And then it's another girl in the other room. they're all roommates, obviously.
Yeah.
And then it pops up with her yearly salary, and it's like 120,000. And it pops up and says, where she's talking, and she's like, I knew I couldn't buy a home on my own, but like going in together with my friends made home ownership possible. And it's showing 3 people with 6-figure salaries not able to purchase a home, buying a home together, and Zillow helped them do that. And that made it through so many levels of marketing admins.
No, I don't think that made it through. I think they were like, we need to get people to buy more homes.
Somebody wrote that. Somebody
That's
filmed
insane.
that. Those actors accepted that role, read those lines, they edited those videos, and then they put some ad dollars behind it for it to pop up on my social media feed. And they were like, oh, you can't afford a home? Buy one with your friends.
Yeah, what's crazy is like, that's a thing that we're actually hearing about happening now. Like people are actually buying homes with their friends.
Yeah.
Which is an insane thing to do. That stresses me out. I hate that.
And it's crazy because it's like the salaries they were showing are salaries that you should be able to live. That's the stuff that's made me radicalize and made me really hate the system that we live in. Those are the things that have changed my algorithm, and now I'm a Karl Barksist. I'm not. Chill. I love ducks.
Should I?
I just love ducks.
Later tonight, when you're sleeping in your bunk, I'm gonna sneak into the.
What did you say?
Let me finish.
Sure. Go ahead.
I want to sneak into this apartment because I have the key. And I'm going to change your algorithm. I'm going to delete your browsing history. I'm going to delete all your subscriptions. I'm going to resubscribe.
It's you saying when you're sleeping in your bunk. I didn't like that.
That's what it is. It's a bunk.
My bed here? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, bed, bunk. It's the same thing.
It's not.
You're sleeping in your bunk.
That's not.
Later tonight when you're all alone inside your bunk.
About how eventually 12 people are going to buy a 3-bedroom house and we're all going to have bunk beds.
I just call beds bunks sometimes.
All right. That's one bunky bed.
Anyway, where are we at in this story?
Okay, so we're talking. Yes. So she's got this crazy evaluation from the stock market, and she's growing. And the thing about the medical industry is that there are more checks and balances than in other industries. So move fast and break stuff is the phrase that's in Silicon Valley. They're trying to do that as a company, but they have to do what?
So what's interesting is there are more checks and balances, but she's getting around all these checks and balances by being a little sneaky. Okay. So they have this system set up with Walgreens, and they're kind of leading Walgreens and Safeway on because they're at a point where they are in active development building these machines.
Right.
And Walgreens and Safeway are retrofitting portions of their store to do these tests. They say, hey, we're not quite ready to ship these devices yet. So you guys, as a phase A, and before we can ship the devices, you guys take the pinpricks, ship the blood to us.
Yes, take the samples
and we'll
there.
email you the results.
Yes.
And so they start doing that.
We're doing off-site blood tests for our machines.
For our machines and we're doing it on our machines. But
we're doing it on our machines.
We're doing it on our machines. Don't worry.
Our machines can do the blood test.
Our machines are doing the blood test. And so
off-site.
So what they do while they're still building it, they are having this blood shipped to them, and they hired a third party that uses these traditional machines to run the blood tests, and then
so they're running the blood tests on normal, regular, boring old blood machines.
Yeah, but they're telling everyone
sending it back and saying our machine gave these results.
Yes.
Which there's a word for that.
I think it's
fraud.
Oh. Hey, thanks for checking out this episode. If you like it, there is some great news for you. We have a mailing list. In that mailing list, we give updates on past episodes. So things in the news, things that happen for episodes. We've got over 200 episodes we've done. And every week, things are changing. New updates are coming out. And we're keeping you up to date on what's happening in the happenings of TILLN Topics. So if you want to keep learning stuff, even beyond the content of the episodes, that's a great place to do it. Also, we give updates on things that's happening in the TILLN verse. I like that. I've never said TILLN verse before, but I'm sticking with it. If you want to know what's happening in the TILLN-verse, that's the best place to do it. You can go to TILLN.com. There's a link in the description, or you can text TILLN to 66866. There's a lot of ways to sign up for the mailing list to make sure you keep up to date with everything that we've talked about and everything that's going on in the TILLN-verse. But anyways, now back to this episode. So they're setting off the stuff that the lab test.
Right.
Meanwhile, everyone believes they're actually getting Theranos tests.
Sure.
And this is like actually real people.
Walgreens believes they're getting Theranos tests. The patients believe they're getting
real
Theranos
patients are
tests.
getting tests that are not authentic tests. And then Theranos takes it a step further because they say, okay, I think we can actually start to use our machines. They haven't shipped them yet, but they're like, I think we can start to use our machines. But they only are about 60% accurate at this point.
Right.
And so they start shipping off tests to real patients with 60% accuracy ratings.
Right.
And blood tests are important. Like that tells doctors what kind of treatment you should have.
Yes.
And so there are people who are getting false positive for real diseases.
Yeah.
And there are people who are not getting positive for diseases that they actually have. And it's actually like genuinely affecting people's health.
Yes.
And so this is all happening behind the scenes. And the culture within Theranos as a company has always been pretty toxic. There's always been this secrecy at all costs sort of things. The way it was taught was we can't let our trade secrets get out.
Right.
And so everyone's like, you can't talk about it. You can't say what's going on. You can't ask questions about the top brass. They were very like, if you're questioning us, you're against us, basically was the culture. And so people who asked questions got fired.
Are you going to bring up her number 2?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
And so if you brought up questions, you got fired. And so in 2014, they were at this big trade show event. And at this event, they were running these tests on the machine the night before, and they realized it's not working. It was malfunctioning, and it was like a last minute issue. And so she said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do the test. We're going to put it in. And she had her programmers program for the screen to give results that were just fake. Like they weren't. It was no test ran, nothing happened. It just displayed results after they put something in. And so they did it. They ran the test, displayed the results. She sends out this company-wide email. She's like, great job, everyone. You guys did such a good job on your feet, responding to adversity. And she's like, we're really changing the world here. We're doing something great here. Her CFO comes to her after that. And her CFO is like, hey, we can't be doing that. You're deceiving your investors.
Right.
You're deceiving the public. Like we can't be lying to people. She fires him on the spot.
Right.
And when that happens, there becomes this, I should say, like larger fear culture.
Looming shadow of I can't speak out against what's happening, even if I know, like, because there was a suspicion among some people who were building the machines, doing the lab, or obviously there are people who are running the actual tests on different machines.
Yeah.
And they're sitting here going like, but there's also that, like, there's so many people who are bought into we're figuring it out. We're doing this, and if we stop doing this, the money stops, and then obviously we can't figure it out at all.
Yeah,
but
we're making
doing
progress.
The ends justify the means in that we're making progress on these things, so we're going to do this unethical thing. But there's also some people in the Theranos system who are saying like, no, this is wrong. We can't keep doing this.
Yes.
And so, when her CFO does that. But a large part of this too is Sunny. Are you going to talk about Sunny?
Yeah, so Sunny Balwani, who is the COO of the company. He has an interesting past. He was a programmer. He worked.
He essentially groomed her. Are we going to talk about that? Do you know about this?
I don't know.
You don't know about
I haven't
the
heard
romantic
about him
relationship?
grooming her. I know about the romantic relationship, but I don't know about him grooming
He's
her.
significantly older than her.
I didn't know he groomed her.
But he was around really early in Theranos.
Interesting.
He was around before the 2013 stuff.
Yeah.
Like he was around like early 2000s.
Yeah, because he was
She was a full adult. It wasn't like he groomed her as a teenager.
Yeah.
But he was in a power position as far as like someone who had money and status.
Yes.
And then he basically, was I don't want to say secluded her, but like was her only support and confidant during some of the earlier years of the company.
Yeah. Yeah. He worked for,
in some scenarios would be categorized as.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
He became her protector against some of the other things.
Yeah, he worked for a company called Commercial Bid. He was the president. He joined and became the president, and then that company sold. And so he made a lot of money in the late 90s before the dot-com bubble burst.
Yes.
And so he was a fairly wealthy person. His background, he had worked in programming in a couple other companies, including Microsoft.
Right.
And one of the things that you see a lot is he said he worked on 1 million lines of code at Microsoft, which doesn't make any sense because obviously that's a lot.
Sounds great though.
Most developers somewhere in the ballpark of 1 to maybe 2,000 a year. And so it's like, he's like, how are you doing that? And so it was above
Copy paste, baby.
above likely figure. Also, when he was at Microsoft, he worked in sales. He didn't work in programming.
Yeah.
So very clearly right off the bat, looks like some sketchy,
He's kind of a sleazy guy.
yeah. And so, yeah, he was 37 when he met Holmes. She was 18.
You
Yeah.
see what I'm saying?
Yeah. So, yeah, I guess he did meet her her senior year of high school. Yeah. Interesting. So he joined and helped with the day-to-day operations of Theranos. And it was very interesting because Holmes would communicate with a lot of people in the company. And when she communicated with people in the company, she would often restate the vision, bring people back to the mission and to the goal, and try to paint this picture that we're making the world a better place.
Yeah, we're changing the world.
What would happen after those meetings, though? People would bring concerns to her. She would paint the vision. It'd be, I wouldn't say a positive meeting because she would just kind of deflect all their concerns and say we're doing something well. But it wasn't a bad experience until later. People would then get an email from Sonny. Yeah. And Sonny would just lay into them.
Yeah.
Paragraph after paragraph, shouty caps, all bold red text, all the negative things you can do in an email, and just degrade people's character.
Well, it also was the kind of person that when you make an argument and you're like, well, you said this.
Yeah.
And they would go, you were putting words in my mouth. I did not say that. And they repeat the same sentence back to you.
Yeah.
You didn't say that exact sentence. You said something to the effect of this. Then that's what you need to say. You need to be more clear with your words. And if you can't even be more clear, the crazy
gaslighting.
Yeah. I try not to use that word as much because as soon as you say that, the people who do it are like, you're using therapy speak and all that. And they gaslight you into thinking they've never gaslit you before. So I try not to use that word because it immediately turns some people off.
Yeah.
But
that's what he was doing.
When you explain the concept of gaslighting to anybody in the world, they go, that does happen.
Yeah, that's something
crazy.
A lot of people do.
And then you go, you do it. And
you're the one who does it. I'm talking about you right now.
And they go,
first of all, I've never gaslit
tell me
you.
when. Give me one example. Give me one example.
Yeah,
give me one.
Me.
Oh, okay. Give me 2 examples.
Actually, that's not gaslighting. What you're saying is not gaslighting.
That's not gaslighting.
That's not gaslighting.
That's not what you just described.
Yeah. Now that you're saying that
we should do a podcast where we just try to gaslight each other the whole time.
That is any of our phone calls.
Actually, we already did that.
That's this whole show.
We did that episode.
Gaslight
We did a whole
show.
episode about gaslighting.
Shut up. I almost believed you.
No, we did a whole episode.
I took the bait for a second and I'm so mad about it. Okay, so
that's you. You're a Billy Mouth Bass.
Oh, speaking of bass, have you seen this? Have you seen Green Day's new Dookie Demastered?
No.
You know Green Day's record Dookie, right? They're doing a remastered version of that record for whatever this is, the 25th, 30th anniversary, something like that.
They're trying to make it as bad as possible?
Yeah. So what they're doing is instead of buying the full record, you buy a single track.
Okay.
Each track comes on what they said is you should have never heard before. And so what they're doing is they're putting it on bad formats. And so, for example, one of them is that Billy Bass, and it's just one of the songs and that sings it.
That's pretty funny.
So one of them's a floppy disk, one of them's a Game Boy Color game, and you put it in, it just plays the song.
That's really
one of them's
funny.
a doorbell. You ring the doorbell, and the doorbell plays the song. And so it's obviously bad. All of them are bad because they're bad audio formats. but it's hilarious.
Pretty brilliant
It's
marketing stuff.
hilarious. And so they're all collector's items. They're like limited to 500 each one.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
they're
yeah.
pretty pricey, but I love the concept.
That's pretty great.
I love the concept.
You can get our TILLN episodes as Billy Mouth.
Well, yeah, we do have
My neighbor had one of those. And now that I'm an adult, thinking about what it would take to be a person who hangs out in your living room.
It was a different time.
That's 2003. We were in Iraq. And
No, we have TILLN Demastered. It was episode 1 through like 14 before
That's
whenever
true.
Alex
if
joined.
you go to the audio only it's the entire first season. If you go to the audio only and listen to what we first did, I edited those in GarageBand. That's true.
Yeah, that's TILLN Demastered right there.
It's bad.
Anyways, so to make it long,
so Sonny was the enforcer to
Yeah.
her, and that's what every good cult needs.
yeah,
Is you need a charismatic leader, and then you need someone who makes sure that your followers follow the rules, and
Yeah.
that's what Sonny was to her.
yeah. So the way this all kind of started to crack, in 2013 they go public. All the fanfare comes out. A reporter with, let me make sure I say the right organization, the Wall Street Journal.
TMZ.
A reporter with the Wall Street Journal hears from one of his contacts in the medical world.
The Lance. The Lance at Evangel University.
Here's from one of his contacts in the medical space.
Sure.
And they're like, I don't think that this sounds possible.
Yeah.
And so he starts looking into it.
Sure.
Meanwhile, at the same time, there's a, I shouldn't say low level, like mid-level staffer by the name of Tyler Schultz. Tyler Schultz got connected with the company.
As his grandfather.
Is George Schultz, one of those early investors, and also what did I say it was? Secretary of State. State? Was it
What
State?
does George Schultz do?
He was a government.
Very influential.
George
Secretary of State.
Schultz.
Was he Secretary of State? Schultz.
George Schultz was. Gosh, can
Secretary of the
get to
Treasury?
the point a little bit faster on his Wikipedia page? Jeez. Secretary of the Treasury. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so Schultz actually introduced him to.
Yeah, so
Elizabeth
George
Holmes.
Schultz got him a job at Theranos.
Yes. And so.
And was like, hey, I'm invested. Pretty big fan. I'm on the board.
Yeah.
Hire my grandson.
Exactly.
He needs a job. And they're like, okay. And then his grandson starts working there and is like, this is lying. We're just lying?
Yeah.
We're lying.
Yeah.
So
He
There's
raises some questions.
yes.
He starts talking to some people and eventually actually talks to Elizabeth Holmes herself about it. And I think he sends an email to her. She doesn't respond to the email.
Right.
Instead, Sonny responds to the email and is basically like, you're out of here. And if it weren't for your name, you would have been out of here a long time ago. You have no
Right.
qualifications. You're a piece of garbage,
Sure.
like all this stuff. And so he reaches out to the government and is like, hey, is this okay? Here's
He
what
actually
we're
first
doing.
went to his grandpa, though. Do you know
Yeah,
about
he
that
did talk
part?
to his grandpa.
And his grandpa was like,
His
no.
grandpa was like, shut up. You're stupid.
No, his grandpa really was like, no, we trust the vision. Like, you're not going to, be grateful that I got you this job.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
And then when his grandpa realizes the truth, his grandpa was actually really instrumental in the whole flip.
Interesting. So he goes to the government and he's like, hey,
Grandpa killed Elizabeth Holmes.
He's like, is this legit? They're like, this is definitely not legit. We should look into this. And so he becomes a whistleblower, kind of not really. I don't think he like set out from the start to be a whistleblower. I think he was like, hey, I've got some questions. No one in the company's taking them seriously. So he went outside the company to ask these questions.
Yeah.
And when he asked those questions with the government agencies he was speaking to, they then were like, okay, hey, you're a whistleblower. Now we need to do this.
Right.
And he's like, oh, that's not really what I was trying to do, but I guess we're here. And so it got really nasty really quick because you said like his grandpa ended up joining sides with him. But before that, Theranos and their lawyers were getting really intense with him.
Oh, yeah.
And like his whole family was trying to be like, hey, you need to drop this. The lawyers.
Like, they're going to financially destroy you.
Yeah.
They're going to come after us.
Yeah.
Like,
And they also, for a long time, like they were kind of family friends with Elizabeth Holmes.
Right.
And like they, at the early phases, like sided with her.
yeah, he put a lot on the line to
And
expose
so after he left the company, they found out that he was quote unquote whistleblowing. They started trying to get him to sign an NDA. So they started trying to get him to
retroactively, which is wild.
To come have a meeting with their lawyers and sign an NDA. They're like, it'll just be a 1-page NDA, just very basic stuff. We just want you to sign it. And he kept refusing. And then finally, like, his grandpa calls him for a meeting at the house to talk about the issue.
And tries to get him to sign the NDA.
And tries to talk him into going to the meeting to sign the NDA. Come to find out, the lawyers were in the back room at the house, like it was like an ambush.
Yes, that's
and they're like, sign the NDA. Yeah.
Because they came in the room.
Mm-hmm. And so, he's like, no. And so finally, that Wall Street Journal, the person writing that article, found out about him. This guy named John Carreyrou found out about him and reached out to him, put together the article, released the article, and it was like bombshell. Once everyone found out, they're just faking all these results, a lot of investors started pulling their cash, or selling their shares. I mean,
were you going to cover one of their main scientists? Were you going to mention this? Do you know about this? One of their main scientists.
Tell me what you're talking about.
Was pushing back on this from the beginning, was just like, we can't keep doing this.
There was a lot of people within the company. I don't know who specifically you're talking about, but I do know there was a lot of people in the company who were saying, hey, this isn't realistic. Like, we're trying to do something that we can't possibly achieve. And they kept having the Silicon Valley mindset where it's like, any problem is solvable. We just need more time. We just need to work harder on it. We just need better minds on it. And anybody who disagrees just kind of gets ousted.
Right. Ian Gibbons.
I don't know him.
You don't know about this?
Yeah.
Ian Gibbons was one of the biochemists who, before they ever went, in 2013, before they even went public on all this stuff, he was pushing back. He didn't want them to do that.
Oh,
because they were faking it way back then.
Yeah.
He knew
because they weren't ready.
And he kept saying it was not even ready. He was saying, this is not possible. And we're lying. You guys are doing this Walgreens deal and all this stuff, and it's not a thing. Yeah. And he couldn't take the lie.
Dang.
And so
interesting.
Yeah. So
all this stuff comes out. Walgreens pulls from the deal. Safeway pulls from the deal.
Right.
Bunch of investors started selling.
But I'm saying, like, one of their main guys from the beginning took his own life in 2013. Mm-hmm. Because he couldn't handle, like, he was like, no, this is wrong or whatever.
I remember that, actually, now that you say that. I remember
and then they went public with all this stuff.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
So they had pushback the entire time.
Oh, yeah. I mean, before she even started the company, she went to someone who knew what they were talking about.
And they had a culture of silence and not speaking up about it, you know?
And it very much seems like they were hiring the wrong kind of engineers to solve this problem. They were hiring engineers who knew how to build machinery, who knew how to write code, but they were not hiring biochemists,
right?
Yeah, like people who could actually solve the problem.
So anyway, yes, the news breaks that, hey, we've been taking the tests. We've been testing them on different machines. We've been lying about all of our progress. Yeah. All of your investments are this is a Ponzi scheme, essentially.
Yes, yeah. So Walgreens pulls, Safeway pulls, and then Kramer...
from Seinfeld.
Jim Cramer from CNBC's Mad Money. You know the show where the guy just yells about money for an hour?
Yeah.
He's like, the stocks are crazy. That guy.
Yeah.
He brings her on the show and he's like, the article's pretty brutal. And she responds to it. And now that I know I can make fun of her voice, she says...
Now I know that's fair game.
She says...
This is just what happens when you work to change things. First, they think you're crazy, and then they fight you, and then all of a sudden, you change the world.
That's what she says.
I don't think we gave you the liberty to make fun of her voice that bad. You're like, now that I can make fun of it, you're like, that's not, I don't think that was... We didn't give you creative license to do that.
I took it.
That's great.
I didn't sign an NDA. So she's like, this is what happens to everybody who's changing the world. Everyone who's making a difference. At some point, they face this kind of adversity.
She really thought she could PR her way through it.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I think...
Which is so delusional.
That's the thing I genuinely think. You mentioned this earlier. I think even through, honestly, probably to today, I think she thought, we're going to figure this out.
Yeah.
We're not there yet. We just need to get there.
But once it clicks,
yeah,
like, this will all be over.
Yeah.
It's like that. It's the sunken cost fallacy as well,
Yeah.
though, where it's
Yeah.
like we're this far in. If we get arrested, it's like, what's the risk? I mean, the risk is that we get caught and I get arrested, sure, but also tomorrow we could figure this out.
Yes. Yeah. And then we're good. Yeah.
You know?
And I think that's the thing too, is like they were having results that were 60% accurate. And so it's like at some point they were having results that were 0% accurate. So it's like we're making progress. Like we're getting there, and this is going to change the world. This is going to make everyone's lives a lot better. This is going to make people healthier and get the care that they need. And so I do think they were like the ends justify the means, and they kept working towards it, but they were never going to get there. And so the FDA comes down pretty hard on the company, and they banned anyone from owning, operating, or directing blood tests using their machines, and from Theranos doing any testing for 2 years. They're like, you're not allowed to do any of this stuff for 2 years.
Yeah.
And so
here's a legal timeout.
Yeah, here's a legal timeout. And basically it was like, well, 2017, then we're going to actually put a suit against you. So like we're giving ourselves some time to figure this all out. And so Fortune updates their ranking for her, where her ranking was a valuation of $4 billion. She was worth $4 billion. And they updated it, just changed it to 0. They put her on the website. They said 0. They didn't remove her from the website. They were like, $0. Which is brutal.
Woof.
And so, long story short, her
but that's only 60% accurate.
Holmes and Sonny both end up in pretty long court proceedings, for their involvement in this. And Holmes is found guilty of 4 counts of defrauding patients, 3 counts of wire fraud, and 1 count of conspiracy to commit wire fraud. But what's interesting is they returned no verdict on 3 counts of fraud against investors, which is interesting. The judge did declare a mistrial on that, but the government dismissed him, which is interesting. And it's very interesting on that note about Silicon Valley culture, because Silicon Valley culture, again, these investors are playing a numbers game. Right. They know they're going to lose money on a lot of these investments. They also know that getting the big bucks in this is being the first.
Oh, for sure.
Is being the earliest to it. And so there is a culture.
And not being the last, because there were some people that at its height sold.
Yes. And
they did make money.
They made a ton of money.
They made a ton of money on it.
Yeah. And so in the Silicon world, like, you need to, if you're one of those investors, you can't burn bridges. You need all those connections. And so there are situations where these investors lose millions on these and they know it's fraud. They know they were tricked. They know they were scammed, but they will not pursue anything on it because it's riskier for them and all their other investments to pursue anything on it. Mm-hmm. They need to save face. And there's questions, especially in this legal proceeding, about that, where it's like, oh, these investors they were okay with losing. I should say they were okay with losing money, but
they had calculated to lose that money.
Yes, they expected it, and they were not going to pursue anything with that.
Yeah,
and so
it's like if there's no complaint, there's no.
Yeah, so the charge against investors and all that ended up failing, but all the medical stuff and the fraud against the American people went through. So she is convicted to 11 and a quarter years. So that puts her getting out in 2023. And Sonny, she was convicted for 11 and a quarter years.
Yeah.
And so
that puts her getting out.
Oh, sorry. She was ordered to surrender in 2023.
Yeah.
She will get out in 2034.
So is she in prison then?
She's in prison. She's in federal prison Camp Bryan in Texas, which is like a minimum security prison.
It's not a bad one.
What
I've seen.
No, Any
pictures of her in prison?
I can only find pictures of her reporting for prison.
Oh, okay.
And so it's not great. And so she's there now. Sonny was also a part of the trial. He was found guilty on all counts and faced up to 20 years in prison and millions of dollars in restitutions. But he received only a sentence of 12 years and 11 months in prison, and then 3 years of probation. And so he surrendered in March of 2023. So I don't know exactly why his was so much
I would guess
larger.
they're already out. I thought Elizabeth Holmes got out. Maybe
No,
she did.
she's still in. She's still in. I don't know about Sunny.
I think that it won't be much longer before they're on
Well,
probation.
2034 is her expiration.
Yeah,
and
but
so I
she'll
mean,
get probation.
yeah,
she'll get all that stuff.
you can be up for parole probably in a few
Yeah.
years, and I don't expect her to be the person who's getting in a bunch of fights in prison, unless she's doing that deep voice thing. Stop doing that with your voice. Why are you doing that with
doing what with my voice?
Why are you doing that with your jaw?
You think it makes you look hot, don't you?
Shut up.
That's from our favorite movie.
That is from our favorite movie.
Anyway,
Madison, picture Madison.
so that's Theranos, huh?
That's Theranos. That's the story of Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos and their blood thing.
Okay.
Here's what's wild.
She had a kid in 2020, didn't she?
I don't know, actually. I mean,
I know she
have
has a
seen-
child.
I have seen pictures of her holding a baby, so
She does have a
someone else.
She does have a kid.
Yeah.
You know, it's one of those things where, like, I mean, I remember through COVID, she was just out living. She had like a beach house, you know?
That's wild. That's wild that her net worth can be zero and she could have a beach house.
That's what I'm saying. It's stuff like that where I'm like, what the heck? And like, so she was out there living. I mean, she really did just try to soak up the last couple of years that she's had. And then she's going to spend 11 years and then she'll be out after that.
I mean, that's the thing with the situation she was in, because she had a net worth of $4 billion. And so when you have a net worth of $4 billion, you're able to use that equity
Yes.
as collateral to get giant loans
Right.
to essentially bankroll your life.
Yeah.
And so she probably has, even though this company fell apart, because of that, she probably
has
has
other companies
really good
that-
assets.
Yeah.
She's going to be fine for the rest of her life after that. Like, you can't.
And that's also part of the calculation.
It's really hard to screw up your life when you're worth $4 billion.
Yep. It's
Like-
really,
She did royally screw up her life. She got a prison sentence for it.
yep.
But she's probably, once she's out, she's probably going to live a better life than most of us.
I saw something today. This is a different thought, but it's about that same kind of, well, like the rich people thing. Someone was talking about New York online, and they said that they really love the diversity of New York. Like, you can be walking down the street and you'll walk past someone who's a millionaire and someone who's, and I said, oh, no. Diversity is not the word you're looking for. The wealth inequality is the word you're looking for.
Diversity.
I just love how diverse this city is. I love the wealth inequality here. That's great. You see how much worse that sounds? That sounds
I love
awful.
the inequality here.
Anyway. But yeah, it really is. It's really hard. That's why you just got to get rich once.
Yeah. Rich ones.
Really hard to mess that
doesn't
up.
matter how, as long as
I have
as
thought
it's
about
a
this.
10-year
We'll talk about this in the
sentence.
after the fiddle. I've thought about some scams I want to do.
All right, man. Well,
But, I'm going to have to fiddle off the IRS. That's her laugh. That's really dumb.
hey, thanks for checking out this episode. If you like it, we've got another one you might like called Stanley Meyer. He's the guy who invented a steam-powered car, and somebody wasn't a fan of it. Little spoiler alert, it does involve Olive Garden, so maybe go get yourself some more breadsticks, crack them in half, because that's how you eat breadsticks, and watch that episode. It's a really good one.
Crack open a hot breadstick.
Jared told me before
Why
this.
don't you just crack open a hot bready?
Jared said, don't try to be funny because you're not good at it. And so here
And
we
then
are.
you were like, crack open a breadstick. And it's like, buddy,
nobody
just do
cracks
the
a
outro.
breadstick. Anyways, if you like this show and you want to see next week's episode early, you can do that right now over on Patreon. You can become a Patreon supporter at TILLN.com/support. There, our patrons get all sorts of great perks, like episodes early, ad-free. They get to join a Discord with our hosts and our producers. And there's a lot of other great benefits. So you can do that at TILLN.com/support. But if not, thanks for being here. We'll see you next week on Things I Learned Last Night.